Namaskar, everyone. My name is Nilesh and we have Matrushree Smriti with us from Anadi Foundation. I had a great pleasure of spending 3 days, close to 3 days, and I see some of the familiar faces from Anadi Foundation in the audience there. So had a great time learning from them and of course sharing some things with me. And so I'm again glad another conversation opportunity for me. How much time we have? Okay, I'll use my full time, let's say, okay. I know it's 45 minutes, but if we are delayed, we can. 45. The reason I ask is I do believe and I'm convinced that anything can be shared, anything can be discussed in any amount of time. So I did not want to go overboard. That's right, including reels and shorts. We see that. So let me just get into it. We'll just have maybe 4 or 5 questions to Matrushree ji. And then I want to leave some time, actually significant time, for the question answers. Again, a request, when the time comes for question and answers, just jump into the question. Please don't give a preamble. If required, she will ask for it. The question begins with who, what, where, why, how, etc. So if you are not doing that, you are not asking a question. With that, let me jump into the question. When I was there, I had an opportunity, I was presented with one book, Panchakosha, okay? And that method, or just using that as a platform to teaching the Indian wisdom. So Matrushree ji, a question for you. Could you share more about that Panchakosha as to what was the thought behind it and why that becomes a great foundation for sharing our wisdom, but also training the future generations?
Namaste everyone, and I'm very happy to be here. Anybody who lives in the ashram for 3 days is practically family for us now. So very happy that Nilesh ji could spend the time with us at Anadi Foundation. Our ashram is located near Parni. So when we talk about the Panchakosha, it's of course there in the Upanishads. The Taittiriya Upanishads talks in detail about the Panchakosha. And of course, in a very simpler and straightforward manner, it is presented in the Prakarana Grantha of Advaita Vedanta called the Tattva Bodha, where it talks about the 5 components of the Jivatma or the living system, whether it is a tree, whether it is a cow, or whether it's a human being. We can look at it through the lens of the Panchakosha. We've also written a book on the Panchakosha. It is available at the stall. So when we say the Pancha, it refers to the Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya and Anandamaya Kosha. So for a fulfilling experience of this human existence or for life itself, and including the educational aspects, the fulfillment at all these levels is needed. We often evaluate our own progress or a child's progress through the lens of how many degrees we have got, or how much money do I have in my bank balance, how many houses do I have, or how much the child has learned in terms of math, physics, chemistry, or whatever it is. But hardly we look at the other dimension is in terms of how healthy I am, what is the mental well-being, or am I going through challenges on that front as well? Or how happy I am in this society, how happy I am in this family and all that. So we hardly pay attention to those dimensions, and life cannot be holistic until we include all these dimensions. For example, we talk about the GDP of any nation, like gross domestic product. Many people are looking at now how can we even make it a more holistic index, not just evaluating a nation's progress on how much we produce or how much money or wealth each nation has. So similarly, when we have to look at our own lives, this Panchakosha becomes a very holistic framework to look at. So this book that we have written on the Panchakosha brings out each dimension in terms of the physical, the emotional, the cognitive, the vital dimension, as well as the inner core spiritual and aesthetic dimension, bringing out what all aspects you can work on in your own life and how you can apply even it to the educational context. For example, we have a Gurukulam at the ashram, Dharma Gurukulam. We have a Gurukulam in Hyderabad called Swadharma Gurukulam. We also have a preschool right now called Bala Gurukulam, Anadi Bala Gurukulam in Hyderabad. In all these Gurukulams, the Panchakosha framework is used, one, to design the curriculum, the pedagogy, as well as the evaluation report. So what report card we send to the parents is not the marks, of course. It's called the Panchakosha sheet, where we look at all these dimensions of the development of the child, and that is how we look at. So what we felt is that now what has happened is that because of the way we give the evaluation report to home, parents have started looking at their own lives through the lens of the Panchakosha, not just looking at, how much knowledge they have or whatever it is. So that way we see it, whether it is the nation's development, whether it is an organizational development, whether it's the personal development or educational development, it can be looked at through the lens of the Panchakosha.
Thank you. And of course, what Matrushree is referring to when she mentions the Taittiriya Upanishad is also known as, some of you who are aware, Bhrugu Varuni Vidya, when the Bhrugu, the son and also the disciple of a Varuna, the father and a guru, comes. And this is the way I take it. See, it's the same story or a same platform. You can almost look at it in a different way. And actually, the reason I'm mentioning is because that takes into my next question, which is the son Bhrugu goes to Varuna and says, "Father, tell me what is Brahma." And instead of giving a quick answer so that person can score better on a SAT and whatever the different exams are, he says, "Go do tapasya." Essentially, find out for yourself. So he's there as a guide, margadarshak, but he doesn't want to give a ready-made answer because it doesn't get accepted. So they go through multiple cycles. He comes back with certain understanding, like the kosha she mentioned, Annam Brahmeti Vejanat. The reason I use that story to say how the process of science, for example, and which means the process of Adhyatma, there is no difference in the Indian context, how it's iterative in nature. So my next question to you, Matrushree, is I saw in those 3 days amazing talent. And I was wondering if there was a way to measure that, I don't know, to call maybe a Gurukula quotient, like we talk of emotional quotient and these different psychological quotients and knowledge quotient. Is there a Gurukula quotient? But that's not my question, at least for now. The question is, I saw amazing amount of science, technology, like bioenzymes lab that I spent time yesterday, that kids are actually working with experts and learning some amazing things and then experimenting on their own. So what do you see the importance of the science, but also different areas like astronomy, medicine, biological things, and importance of them in the education?
Yeah, thank you so much. We started the Gurukulam in 2021. Both of us, my husband and I, and of course all the people associated with us at Anadi Foundation, have a science and technology background. So over a period of time, it is now part of our DNA. I often joke that though in the yoga sthiti, we have to remove the vrittis, but still the vrittis of regex or regular expressions and the scripting has not left me. So even if I have to read the Mahabharata, I find it easy to write a small Python script to, find out where things are in the Mahabharata. So that way, technology and science is part of what we do. And then when we were exploring the designs of various Gurukulams, it was so fascinating to see the number of Gurukulams throughout the country in different flavors. There's no one flavor. Unfortunately, in the modern context, we have like one a board or something that decides the curriculum of the entire country. But that's not what the country stands for. We need diversity in the way. For example, why should always math be taught in a certain way? There's so many different ways. For example, when you take Indian texts, there are so many different ways that you can arrive at the same answer. Right? That's when we felt that there are Gurukulams dedicated to different things. Could be music, could be arts, could be through the Vedas. We wanted to create something which explores the scientific aspects, because when you look at the Indian knowledge systems, it's not just known for philosophy or the Vedanta, or not just those, but also for the scientific aspects. So we have rishis who have contributed very, very deeply to, say, Ayurveda, which can solve modern problems, yoga, which can solve modern problems, astronomy, fantastic things have been done, math, fantastic things have been done. So what we do at the Gurukulam is that we take some of the source texts of each of these scientific domains And children are exposed to the knowledge system through the source text, of course, learning the verses by heart or by memory. I'll also talk about this memorization aspect a little bit, which is something,
Please.
yeah. And also learn to practically apply them in daily life. So when they learn Vata Pitta Kapha, when they learn the verses from say Ashtanga Hridayam about Vata Pitta Kapha, it is not just as a concept, but they live it. Like we have had some of the children talk about, it's like, don't serve me this particular food, it increases Vata in the body. Today I'm feeling a little bit of joint pain. Or I don't want to eat this tilka laddu today because my pitta goes up if I eat it today. So based on the ritus, based on the seasons, based on the daily weather patterns, they actually start to observe their body. And not just that, we have cows at the ashram, we have 30, 35 cows at the ashram. They start applying the lens of Ayurveda for the vriksha or plants as well as animals, pashu. So what happens is it's the same underlying framework that can actually be applied to various things. And astronomy is something that's fascinating. I'm sure, like, you know, we've been very inspired by the work that you do and through the use of tools from astronomy. Astronomy is something that creates a wonder, something that's really missing in today's curriculum. We have a lot of educators who had spoken here. We have people here, parents here. Astronomy is something that must be introduced to every child. The Panchanga system, the calendar, the Indian calendrical system. There are so many funny things that we can talk about the Gregorian calendar. It's useful in some way because today, you know, if we have to come to this event, practically we say today is the date we arrive based on the Gregorian calendar. But there's so much more that one can learn from the Panchangam or Bharatiya Ganita for that matter. I'll also read a few verses, from Bharatiya Ganita. So what we did was when we designed the Gurukulam, we wanted to focus on the Bharatiya sciences so that rishis of the future can be created. My sister-in-law, who was also part of the foundation, she calls our Gurukulam Rishi Manufacturing Unit. Because we envision Bharatiya Vijnanis emerge who will actually work on some of the cutting-edge sciences, but with the Bharatiya Vijnana as the focus. And that's very much possible. We've been educators, we've been university professors. We also work with a lot with the IKS, the fraternity throughout the globe. And we see a huge possibility to do all of this thing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
When I was there, not only some of the subjects she mentioned, which are at my heart, so that may be one of the reason, I could find the resonance, but something else. As I was talking to the teachers, some of the methods that they use into the curriculum, there were many, and I will let rather her speak about those methods with my next question. But what I was very fascinated, actually the students asked me and some of the teachers asked me, how was it as a process for me to write a book? Like I have written 3 books, but it's not about me right now. So I said, well, how does a plastic salesperson writes a book? That was my challenge when I wrote the first book. And just as a way of finding the solution, what I turned to is what is called a mind mapping. And so then it was such a pleasant surprise when I was there. And practically, I don't know if all teachers, and you can answer that, but definitely some of the teachers and every student there understands mind mapping. And that's how actually they take notes. And that's how, they are very effective, the students I'm talking, at what they do. In fact, it was so impressive when I would have a one-on-one conversation with them, many of the conversations initiated by these students. And I was so impressed with what they were sharing with me. I never felt like I'm talking to students. I felt like I'm talking to like my peers. And I would always make a point to ask them, how old are you? And every time the answer they gave me impressed me. So my question to you, in the way of sharing, because there are gurukuls, and when we think of a gurukul, everyone has a concept. Each one of us has a vision what the gurukul sounds like. What are some of the specific things that you do at a gurukul? And if somebody else, or if we need to create this supply chain you talked about, manufacturing unit, create a wave of gurukuls, and how that needs to be if we need to succeed?
Thank you for this keen observation of what is happening in the Gurukulam, because sometimes we live in that environment. It takes somebody who comes from outside to have this observation. The pedagogy, of course, we use a lot of variety of pedagogical techniques. Of course, the note taking in terms of the concept map. In fact, I went to one of the, in a school we actually travel on every Tuesday and offer these IKS sessions. So in one of the sessions, I just happened to have a conversation on sustainability. And then I asked the students to list down, what all chemicals that we use in life or on a daily basis. And then the students said, soap, shampoo, petrol, this thing. And then somebody even pointed out ballpoint pen and all that. Then what I did was, it just struck me that, I said, okay, in our Gurukulam, what all we do? I struck out each item saying that we don't need to use this, we don't need to use this. And then they asked, finally, this ballpoint pen was left over. Then I said, since the Gurukula Vidyarthis commit to memory, there is practically no need for the ballpoint pen also. But okay, anyway, now we are using that as a hybrid way of learning. So this memorization actually plays a very crucial role. We've had this Professor James Hartzell talk about the Sanskrit effect in such detail that a lot of changes actually happen in the brain when you memorize content. And this has to be slightly differentiated from the rote learning aspects that we talk about today, though rote learning actually means memorization. But there's so much, even if you look at the NEP documents, when you look at the government documents related to education, they would say that you should avoid rote learning, that should not be the culture. But when you learn a paragraph in physics, that's very different from learning a few verses from, say, Vaisheshika, or when you learn a few verses from Bharatiya Ganita. Because the structure which I will be talking about, of course, I'll be asking Gauri ma'am more about this. But the way the structure of the language itself is designed, it actually creates a huge, even structural changes in the brain. The hippocampal region gets enhanced. The white matter, gray matter changes when you memorize content. So that way, the Indian knowledge system, what we call as Indian knowledge systems, itself is designed to have a profound impact on the Vidyarthi at multiple levels at the Panchakosha level. But of course, we are mindful that the India has millions of learners. To replace the current system with the Gurukula system immediately is not a practical approach. The mainstream education, which is rare right now, which is facilitated by the boards, various boards, is working and helping the population. But what has happened is that for people who want an alternative approach, that was not made available for such a long time. If somebody says, I don't want to have this particular thing, there needs to be an alternative way or alternative approach to learning, alternative place to consume or access that kind of a knowledge. So that way I see our efforts in establishing more Gurukulams. I come from the computer science world. We always talk of object-oriented programming, where there are large number of simple classes. So if there are larger number of simple educational setups, it's much more effective than having mass educational systems where there are 5,000 students. Of course, we have had Nalanda, Takshashila with so many students. But what has actually worked are those simple educational ecosystems where this knowledge can be offered in a profound manner. The challenge, of course, is in terms of finding the right amount of teachers to do this, but with a little bit of training, with a little bit of passion, with a little bit of will to even get trained on this, I'm sure those gaps can be bridged. And a lot of support is coming from the government in terms of how these people can actually be absorbed into the higher education as well. So with all these things, now the society is waking up to this kind of a learning system, so where parents who truly want to impart a value-based education to their child, which is more dharmic in nature. Of course, this is a straight way to counter wokeism that they were talking about. How do you make culture cool and culture accessible? Introduce Indian knowledge system, simple aspects of those. A lot of actually interest is created in the child's mind.
Thank you. And just since you mentioned wokeism, so I have to say something now.
Yes, definitely.
So talking of wokeism and memorization, like since my work about 15 years ago, many people come to me, mostly from an Indian background, both young but also grown-ups, and say, Nilesh, I also want to do research like you. And so I say, what area? And it's amazing. They will say, in astronomy, what else? I said, that's not true. It's a technique that you can apply to anything. And the next thing they say, no, but let's start with astronomy. I said, do you know your 27 nakshatras? He said, yeah, that 27 nakshatra, right, I know, it's there in the book. Now tell me what to do next. I said, do you know your 27 nakshatra? So there is actually a reason why you need to remember, and as you said, not by rote, but actually know the name, know the sequence, ability to visualize them in the sky. And I said, unless you do this, you will not able to solve this puzzle. To the extent, I'll tell you the wokeism, even in the grown-up people, which is to say, many people, this morning, Ashwin Sangi and we were traveling together, and he says, Nilesh, I see your challenge must be a big one, because you know, the amount of resistance you get and all the words that they use, and the disagreement, why can't they see that there can be multiple points of views? I said, wokeism goes one step further. They disagree with my view, or they disagree with my opinion without having their own. That is wokeism. On a similar lines, as a U-turn, if you have heard that, that happens. Much of the knowledge of India is taken, it goes to other parts of the world, and then goes to places like Harvard and whatnot, gets repackaged, like Yoga Nidra becomes mindful meditation and whatnot, it comes back. Now, when you talk with teaching the young children, by the way, before I ask the question, I would encourage all of you, if you get a time, and if the Anadi students are here, I know they are here right now, do find a time to open a conversation with them, maybe less than 5 minutes, and see what your perception is about their age. You may feel like asking them the question, how old are they? Okay? But on that, like we have these many systems, such as say Montessori, and I'm sure there are many others that I'm not even aware of. If you dig down deep, you find some of the terms, some of the principles they borrowed from us, but then in a reductionist fashion, they implemented in a slightly different fashion. Now, a lot of good came out of it. But my question to you is, what are some of the things that you have learned through this Gurukula system, your own sadhana, that we can use from the Indian system that can be implemented into the Gurukula or education in general? So if you can share a few.
I just want to delve a little bit on that note that you talk about this U-turn. We often speak about the contribution of the Indians to mathematics or the world. They talk about zero as if it's zero contribution to the world science. But the entire number system that we talk about has come from Bharat, which we call Arabic numerals or whatever it is at this point in time, right? Or the English or the European numbers. So there's been tremendous contribution. And this astronomy also is a very fascinating thing. Somehow this keeps interesting me. I often ask people, like, when you say septa, right, what does septa indicate? 7. Octa? Nava? Deca? 10. Which is, what month is September? 7th month or 9th month? Why is it the 9th month? Julius and Augustus got inserted in between, and both of them wanted 31 days probably. And that's why now we have the system January, February, March, April, right? When you look at the English or the Gregorian calendar that we follow, a lot of funny things are there with respect to the movement of the grahas, not really mapped that way. So it's very important to bring out the real scientific aspects. When we talk about the modern aspects, many of this, it's somehow, as you said, wokeism, it's somehow hidden under the garb of science, but many of this could actually be superstitious in many ways, which we don't have pratyaksha knowledge of. Probably there's a lot of guesswork, and probably they didn't understand many aspects of Indian sciences, so they just came out with many things. But of course, that's reserved for another conversation. One of the very crucial aspects that we can take from our knowledge system, which can be implemented at a very larger mainstream scale, is in terms of yoga and Ayurveda for well-being. That is something that people have started experiencing, especially during the pandemic. The number of people who took to, say, pranayama, or say a kada or a siddha. We have Kabasura Kudinir in Tamil Nadu, which is actually the Kaphajwara Kudinir, right? So the number of people who took to it was, constantly increasing. So we feel large number of people when I teach at IIT Delhi, and many IITs have seen that lot of mental health issues are there, not just in IITs, right? It started from the school level itself. So one crucial aspect, if at all an institution or a professional, somebody wants to integrate Indian knowledge systems immediately into their workplaces, into their institutions, or even such a lit fest for that matter, can start with simple meditative techniques, simple yogic practices, which will ensure the physical and emotional well-being of the people. So that is one big contribution of the Bharatiya rishis to the world, which is very, very relevant even today. And the other aspects is, of course, the philosophical aspects. A lot of it, understanding about life, understanding about relationships, for that matter. What has happened is that in the modern context, we get educated up to, say, 16 years of age, 18 years of age, 22 years of age, and all of a sudden we are thrown into a professional environment, into married life, without even any hand-holding into these processes. But when you look at the Bharatiya way of life, we've had, people who are our, say, Kula Acharya, who will guide us continuously on this path. It's not just my education, but how do I lead my life? How do I look at relationships in my home? How do I manage my professional relationships? What is my dharma to the society? All this is not part of the current educational process. For example, one small thing that we inculcate in our Gurukulam is every Shashti we do Annadanam in Palni, which is about 17 kilometers from our ashram. So we cook food and we serve for about 200 people. We take it to Palni and serve it. So we make sure that 2 to 3 Gurukula children accompany us. And if all the Gurukula children serve those people with their own hands. That simple Seva Bhava, the idea of giving back to the society, if it is inculcated, Swami Vivekananda said, who takes from education but does not give back is a traitor. He used a very strong word that way, right? So this is a very crucial aspect of giving back to the society, and that is cultivated by exposure to what we call Bharatiya knowledge systems, or our Itihasa Purana, the texts, and many of these aspects. And the Itihasa Purana, you have uncovered it in such a magnificent way. They have so many things to actually teach the world.
Thank you. Yesterday, I was having a conversation before I left for Coimbatore with Srimanji, and one subject or the other, we went into Patanjali Yoga Shastra. And then he was talking of his own experience, but also empirical experiments that he has done with the food. What kind of food is conducible for sadhana or a meditation or samadhi, different aspects of it. And then he also said, so once he perfected something, he will go for, say, 40-day meditation, but then come back and then take that break. And so whatever he has learned through these reflections, let's say, to share with the society. And so what he was just saying, and as he said it, I was kind of quoting few things from Patanjali Yoga Sutra. For example, Vibhutipad, he said, Dhyana, Dharana, Samadhi equal to Sanyam. And then he said he will take a break, and whatever he has learned to share that back to society. And he said that's exactly what Bhagwan Patanjali says, Tasya Bhumeshu Viniyogaha. That is the next sutra. So once you have learned it, so Sanyam or Samadhi doesn't mean like, so it says, Bhuvane Jnanam Surye Sanyamat. If you do the Sanyam on a sun, you get to know about the earth's knowledge. That does not mean staring at the sun. That means understanding what is happening with the sun. So there is that back and forth, and also what you just before referred to, a iterative process. You go learn something, come back and learn more. Thank you for sharing number of things about the Anadi Foundation and your inner experiments. Huge empirical work that these guys are doing there. I was truly impressed. And let the students do the experiments, learn from it. These like 2 or 3 students will be cooking for 40 people. And if you're thinking it's like a child labor, that's not the case. Okay, they are doing it very joyfully. That's why I said spend some time with these young students if you get a chance. With that, I would like to open up for questions. So I think Shefali said, this side got the questions, so we'll start with this side first. Questions for Matrushree ji.
Before the questions, I just want to say one point. In terms of establishing Gurukulams, of course, it's a process which takes time and over a period of time. But what we've done is that for mainstream schools to benefit, we've created a set of 14 books, right from preschool age to grade 1, 2, 3, whatever it is, up to the high school level, and even a little bit beyond that. We've created books. Of course, it's available in the bookstores for you to take. It's a blend of English and some verses are mentioned so that people know what is the source from which this knowledge is coming. The idea of writing these books, of course, we are just happy to do our sadhana, no need to write books that way. But then when a lot of people said that this knowledge has to be brought out in ways that people outside the Gurukulam can also consume. So we felt these books will be helpful that way. We offer teacher training programs and all that. Of course, the books are available in the stalls.
Okay, so quickly I will make a comment on that. I forgot to mention, but I want to mention the books for a different reason. As I go around, I get asked this question. So Nilesh, you're talking about all this knowledge. When does it get into the textbook?
Yeah.
Okay, 2 points on that. So whenever the government figures it out, let them figure it out.
Yes.
And until and unless we get as excited as we get excited for the movies or the cricket, this will not happen. If you think few people sitting on the podium are going to do it, it just does not happen that way. But the kind of effort that Anadi Foundation has done, and you mentioned 14 books.
14 books.
So what I was discussing that, there, and I said, what, these are the textbooks ready, because even the government is looking for assistance. I'm working with a couple of state governments to actually change their textbooks, okay? But like, I don't have an immediate something ready material. So something like what they have done, these are the textbooks, they are actually being used and very effectively adjusted.
15,000 students right now are adopting these books throughout the country.
Right. So whenever the government is finally ready, these are the textbooks. Thank you. With that, we will get into questions, and let's start on this side.
We integrate with the open schooling curriculums. So our students write NIOS exams, if they want to write the exams. So what we've done is, at the preschool level, we have the educator's manual called Sadvidya. We have set of 2 books called Amazing Indian Knowledge Systems for ages 6 to 9. We have a Bharatiya Vijnana Pravesha, which is a set of 6 books, level 1, 2, and 3 on Bharatiya, integrated Indian sciences and Ganita. Integrated Indian sciences and Ganita, Bharatiya Ganita. We have a primer series which is on Ayurveda, astronomy, the science of yoga, and also the Indian principles of leadership. The way this book is written is we've taken insights from Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita, Niti Shastra, Nyaya Shastra, and constituted 15 activities which you can straight away conduct in the classroom in order to impart Indic leadership principles. And then we have this Panchakosha book with us. The Bharatiya Ganita, there is a slight difference with the way what is called Vedic mathematics is by Puri Shankaracharya. But what we've done is we've included insights from texts like Leelavati, Aryabhatiya, and other texts as well. Yeah, not just the Vedic math. Vedic math techniques are also there. But apart from that, we've taken content from other texts as well. Namaste.
You told that you asked your students to delete the chemical aspects. Ultimately, the ballpoint pen was there. You told that you remove that, you keep everything in your memory map, mind map, he told. So how it is? What are the methods to make the memory?
Thank you so much for asking. I was waiting for this question. Okay. So I'll just read out a verse from my students are better at chanting this, but nevertheless. I'll just chant a verse which goes like this. Atulya karnabhihatir vibhakta phalam sputam tulya chaturbhuje syat samashrutau tulya chaturbhuje cha tathayate tadbhujakoti ghataha. This will probably, if you're not initiated into Ganita, you will think it's from a divine shloka or something. But it actually talks about the finding the area of a quadrilateral. Okay? You can, if you want, you can set it to a Kalyani ragam, or you can set it to a Bhairavi ragam and sing it if you want to. But nevertheless, it talks about in an unequal quadrilateral, the product of unequal diagonals divided by 2 would be the exact area. In equal quadrilaterals having equal diagonals, the product of their bhuja and koti, which is the length and breadth, gives the exact area. So what happens is that the children at the Gurukulam learn these verses, commit these verses to memory. So they are not by-hearting that paragraph which I read out now. They are actually by-hearting the verses there. So it creates a lot of cognitive resonance when they learn it as verses. They can sing it. When you come to the ashram, you can even observe when they are washing their clothes, they are actually chanting some of these verses, because you know how addictive chanting. Just as a child that goes in a school bus or in a public bus that plays cinema songs comes back and sings those cinema songs. These children are actually addicted to just singing these verses from many of these Bharatiya texts. So, and there are so many unintended or unplanned consequences of learning this. You know, we as adults imagine certain outcomes for the child based on this content. But actually something much more happens because of exposure to this. Not just the verses they learn, not just the mathematical techniques they learn values through this. They learn itihasa. For example, there is a verse that talks about the arrows shot when Karna was killed. That is a mathematical verse that talks about a lot of fractions and a quadratic equation that can be solved. Then you can talk about the itihasic story behind it, you can talk the mathematics, you can present the values, you can even bring a joke over there. Right? So there are so many more dimensions that can be covered when children learn these as verses. This has been happening in Veda Pathashalas for many, many years, thousands of years it has been happening. But given this kala and this situation, paristhiti, probably we have to adapt these and offer it in a way that today's children can consume. Somebody was talking about logical explanations. So this Bharatiya knowledge system has to be brought out with the logical aspects as well, and that is what we have attempted to do. Thank you.
Ma'am, namaskar. This audio version creates a lot of interest. If there are no copyright type of issues, will it be made available to the public or to students? Any such effort has been done?
Yes. So these books are available, and each book has accompanying videos every chapter. Apart from that, the audio chants that are there is also available in the learning management system, very simple system. And we also have a web page called Chantalong, anadi.org/chantalong, where some of these verses we have put it as audio there for people to learn. We regularly conduct Bharatiya Vijnana chanting sessions where people can come online and learn. These are some of the mechanisms we are trying our best. It's only limited by the number of people we have, our typing speed, and how many words per minute we can speak.
Namaskaram to both of you. I'm just interested to know in what way the Gurukula is helping children to understand the difference between accumulating knowledge and learning. Thank you.
What happens is that through the journey of the child probably may not experience it immediately, because the child is just going through the education. To do a upamana or comparison between the other system, it is too early for the child to do. But nevertheless, we had one visitor to the ashram who asked, what is the difference that you see between your previous school and now you're here in the Gurukulam? How do you see it different? The child said, whatever I study in grade 1, I just forget at that time. Of course, ABCD, somehow we have managed to remember it all our lives. Whatever I study in grade 2, when I go to grade 3, I forget that. But here when I came to the Gurukulam, whatever I learned from day one till these 3 years, I even now remember that because good amount of it has been in the form of Sanskritam verses or say Tamil Tirukurals and other things. So that way what happens is that this associative knowledge builds. People here who are exposed to Sanskritam will vouch for that. When you learn Sanskritam, when you learn verses from the source text, lot of associated knowledge builds. You quote a word, you actually link it to so many texts that you actually find that word, which does not happen when you by heart paragraphs in English. Say you learn, physics or biology, you by heart it and write it in the exam without understanding. And then when you grow up in a Gurukulam, there is also this pratyaksha knowledge that is available. For example, somebody was asking, like, how do you teach gender and other things to young children? Now you have so much in schools that you have to teach. I said they live with cows. So the life science laboratory happens in the Goshala. They know about the birthing process. They know about the entire life cycle that happens just by observing the cows. So very early on, even without us verbally putting a chart or showing pictures or whatever, the life science education happens in a very natural way, without the discomfort of us having to, I'm sure teachers and parents know here. So that way, it's a very immersive way to learn things. But we do understand, we can't create larger systems. But of course, our Gurukulam is open to visit. You can come, children, we welcome children to come and experience it for a few days, how much ever time you can spend. That way, it gives you a first-hand experience of how the transformation can happen.
Any additional questions? All right, we have 3 minutes or something like this.
Do the book launch, sir.
Question? All right. That's a good question.
Okay. So this concept of weekend, why is a Sunday a holiday? One of the reasons, if you can tell, why is Sunday a holiday? Yeah. Yeah, Brook feels small, of course. You have to go to the church, right? So for us, it's not defined by just going to one place on a particular day, right? So that way, the concept of weekend is taken off our heads. We don't know how the calendar passes. But of course, practically, since we interact with the outside world, we are very much in not a too remote corner, but we need not worry about all the parameters that we worry about in an urban environment. But nevertheless, this holidays, of course, practically in our Gurukulam, it is during Deepavali holidays and summer holidays. But this concept of holidays itself, what happens typically is that we allow them to go for summer holidays. Within 20 days, they start messaging us. Acharya, please conduct some online class. When can I come back? Shall I come back on June 5th? I can't wait till June 12th or whatever. We tell them, no, it's our sadhana time. You be at home. We want you to come back only when we ask you to come back to. So these things happen. Any child, of course, they miss the content. The other thing, they miss the environment. This happens with the mainstream school, this thing. But of course, this concept of weekend is not so much there. So what we do is also, is that there are some days when acharyas, the teachers, they take the children around the hill. One teacher with 5 children. They go in the morning with some rice, dal, some salt and kitchen supplies. They cook there itself. The acharyas cook for the children. But then from morning 6 to evening 6, they spend, it's called the, what is it, Vanaparva day. It's called the Vanaparva day, like living in a forest. So they cook they cook in the morning and in the evening, but in the meantime, they just learning happens there, playing happens there, to experience the aspect of learning in a forest. So that way, the holiday as such is not a big concept in the Gurukulam.
I will add something. If you are thinking it's all vacation at the Gurukul, it's not. There is a rigor to it. For example, on certain days, like going to this Vanaparva day, they are also given a book. Yeah. So they said, okay, they all go with the raw ingredients. They have to cook, they have to entertain themselves, they have to take rest, but also complete the book and then come back. Yeah. So they also learn the efficiency techniques and how they have to do it. So I
Yes.
found that very impressive. Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, please.
Namaskaram. I just wanted a few words on your teacher training program that you just mentioned. How open it is to outsiders and what's the process?
So when we say educator, it's to do with not just a teacher who works in a school, but who wants to take up Indian knowledge systems and impart it to even children at their own home or in their own flat or whatever society. So we have one self-paced learning course. After this program, the information will be available at the desk. So we have a self-paced IKS course which parents, educators can go through and then imbibe from the books. That is one thing. The other thing what we've done is we've also created these centers throughout the country. So now we have centers in Mumbai, Pune, Vishakhapatnam, Chennai, Bengaluru, Tiruvannamalai, one in Coimbatore, as well, where on Sundays, children can go and learn from one of the teachers who's been trained through the self-paced IKS course. So on this Vijay Dashmi, we recently launched this program. So most welcome to enroll in this.
So with that, Matrushree, I would like to thank on the behalf of the Western Lit
Thank you so
Fest and
much.
everyone present here. Thank you for sharing your experience with all of us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for a very